Ladies and gentlemen, listen very carefully, because what just happened is something most people said could never be done. They doubted it, they mocked it, but we got it done. And not just done, we did it beautifully, strongly, and perfect time. The United States has reached a powerful historic trade agreement with Japan, cutting tariffs down to 15%. 15%. And let me tell you something, it's not just a number, it's a statement of confidence, a statement of strength, a statement of mastery. This is what winning looks like when you're not distracted, not emotionally swayed, but totally aligned with purpose. People keep asking, how did you do it? It wasn't through emotion. It wasn't by crying or begging or throwing tantrums like the old establishment used to do. It's done through strength, through patience, through understanding who we are. You have to know who you are, folks. You have to. If you don't know who you are, every negotiation will defeat you before it begins. Most people are so emotionally entangled they can't see the battlefield. They're too busy reacting. But you don't win by reacting. You win by seeing clearly. You win by holding the line. You win by being spiritually unshaken. That's the new America. That's what we're building. We looked Japan in the eye and said, we're not desperate. We're disciplined. We're not emotional. We're eternal. We don't need chaos to win. We bring order with us. And they saw it. They felt it. That's why the deal happened. See, when you detach from outcome, when you no longer beg for approval, because fairness, beg for what's already yours, you become powerful. And that's what we've done as a country. We've stepped into power, not false, loud, insecure power, but real, divine, unshakable power. The weak man cries about unfair trade. The strong man reshapes the rules. And let me be very clear, this deal is a reshaping of the rules, a resetting of balance, a restoring of dignity. And it's not just about trade. No, it's much bigger than that. This is about America walking into a new identity, an identity where we no longer beg, we bless, we don't chase, we choose. And when we speak, the world listens. Why? Because we're speaking from vision, not emotion, from truth, not fear. This is spiritual warfare, folks. And only the spiritually mature can win this level of war. That's what this is. Most don't understand that trade deals are spiritual deals. It's about presence, energy, clarity, and most of all, knowing your worth. When you're emotionally desperate, you make desperate deals. When you're spiritually rooted, you make destiny deals. This, what we just did with Japan, is a destiny deal, not just for us, for the world. 15% tariffs. That's not weakness, it's wisdom. It's not surrender, it's sovereignty. The world is watching, they're learning, and they're realizing the America that once bowed is now building. The America that once followed is now leading, and we're doing it without apology. When you master your emotions, you master outcomes, and that's what we've done. That's what you're witnessing. Not just politics, purpose, not just trade, transformation. This isn't just a deal, it's a divine reset. And it's only the beginning. Great leaders don't react emotionally. They negotiate strategically. This isn't just about power. It's about posture. When you're sitting at the table, whether it's with a nation or a business partner, the one who controls their emotions controls the outcome. Weakness shows itself when a leader reacts, when they let anger, fear, or ego dictate their decisions. That's not leadership. That's insecurity masquerading as strength. The strongest leaders are calm, composed, and calculating. They don't take bait. They don't get flustered. They don't talk just to talk. They wait. They listen. They strike when it matters. The emotional man is always playing defense. He's trying to prove himself. He's trying to be liked. But the strategic leader, he already knows who he is. He doesn't need validation. He doesn't need applause. He's thinking 5, 10, 20 steps ahead. That's how you win. Not by yelling, not by panicking, but by being unshakable. You see it in great deals. They don't come from pressure. They come from position. When a leader is grounded, detached from needing approval, and completely focused on the mission, that's when nations shift. That's when enemies respect you. That's when allies trust you. You become a pillar, not a puppet. Strategic negotiation begins with inner mastery. You control yourself, then you control the table. Most people have never learned that. They think strength is noise, but true strength is silence, followed by precision. You wait for your moment, and then you move clean, clear, without doubt. So if you want to lead, stop reacting, get still, get sharp, know your value. Don't sell yourself cheap because you're afraid of losing. The moment you lose fear, you gain favor, and the world deals differently with those who don't flinch. Trade deals are not just transactions, they're reflections of a nation's destiny. When a country signs a trade agreement, it's not just about economics, numbers, or percentages. It's about alignment. It's about identity. It's about knowing where you stand in the story of history. Nations that understand their destiny don't enter deals from desperation. They enter with dominion. They don't ask, what can we get? They declare, this is who we are. This is what we offer. This is what we expect. That's the power of divine position. A trade deal reveals what a country truly believes about itself. If it's insecure, it gives too much. If it's proud but unfocused, it demands too much and walks away empty-handed. But when a nation knows its destiny, it's not chaotic. It's calculated. It doesn't flinch. It doesn't fold. It carries a weight, a presence, and that presence shifts the room. Destiny-driven deals don't just bring profit. They restore honor. They rebuild industries. They say to the world, we're not here to play small. We're here to build something eternal. You look at the great empires of history, not one of them rose without controlling trade. Not one of them survived by begging for better terms. The terms were written by the ones who had vision. And vision is what separates deals that fade from deals that shake the world. The United States, when it's aligned with its higher purpose, doesn't settle for scraps. It designs outcomes. It leads markets. It creates the standard, and the moment it stops treating trade like survival and starts treating it like destiny, everything shifts. That's not arrogance, that's authority, that's not manipulation, that's manifestation. And when destiny speaks at the table, the world listens because everyone recognizes the sound of a nation that knows where it's going. Strength is not always loud, it's not always forceful. True strength is often quiet, still, and waiting. It's the kind of power that doesn't have to announce itself. It simply exists and everyone feels it. Aggression is what insecure people do when they don't trust their position. They shout, they push, they try to dominate. But patience is what the strong use to win. Not because they're slow, not because they're unsure, but because they're focused, strategic, and they know that timing matters more than volume. Patience doesn't mean passivity. It means you understand that rushing leads to ruin. That when you move too fast, you miss the real opportunity. Aggression demands quick results, but real power is about longevity. It's about building outcomes that last. And that only happens when a leader has the patience to see beyond the moment, beyond the noise, beyond the pressure. Precision is what gives your strength form. Without precision, strength becomes chaos, but with it, strength becomes legacy. Think about it. Anyone can throw a punch, but the wise one waits for the perfect strike. That's how nations win wars without firing a shot. That's how deals get signed without threats. That's how respect is earned without raising a voice. In negotiation, in leadership, in every battle, those who master their pace, master their power. A reckless move made too early destroys everything. But a calculated move at the right moment can change history. It's not about reacting, it's about responding. And it's not about pushing your way through, it's about positioning yourself so perfectly that the doors open without resistance. So when you see patience, don't mistake it for weakness. It's the strongest play on the board, because the leader who can wait without wavering is the one who cannot be defeated. Spiritual detachment isn't indifference, it's discipline. It's knowing that your worth isn't defined by any deal, any moment, or any approval from others. When you're detached, you're free to think clearly, free to see things for what they are, not through the lens of fear, ego, or desperation, but through truth. Detachment gives you vision, and vision builds empires. The people who panic are the people who are too attached to outcomes, to emotions, to how they'll look or feel. But the wise, those who operate from a higher place, detach, and in that detachment, they become unstoppable. When a leader is spiritually detached, they become calm in chaos. While others are negotiating from fear, they are operating from alignment. They don't need to prove anything. They don't need to grab. They don't chase, they attract. And because they aren't clouded by need, they can see angles others miss. That's where the power is. Emotion clouds judgment, but detachment sharpens it. When you're too emotionally invested, you'll say yes when you should say no. You'll settle when you should hold the line. But when you detach, you operate with clarity. You can walk away from anything that doesn't serve your purpose. That's strength. That's confidence. That's leadership. And it doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care enough not to be controlled. It means you refuse to let fear or need dictate your decisions. A detached leader doesn't act out of pressure. They act out of purpose. They wait, they assess, and they move when it's right, not when it's loud. That's how great deals are made. That's how global respect is earned. Not through overcommitment, but through unwavering clarity. And once you understand that, you don't just lead with power, you lead with peace. Because nothing owns you, and that's when you own the moment. When you detach from fear, you see the battlefield. Fear is blinding. It distorts your judgment, rushes your decisions, and makes you vulnerable to manipulation. Most people don't realize how much fear controls them. They negotiate in fear, they lead in fear, they parent in fear, and they wonder why things collapse. Fear makes you reactive. It makes you chase instead of choose. But when you break free from it, when you step out of fear's grip, you begin to see everything different. You see opportunities, not threats. You see strategy, not panic. You see the entire board, not just your next move. People who lead from fear always lose, even if they win temporarily, because fear makes you settle. It makes you overpay, overpromise, and underdeliver. But when you're fearless, not careless, but fearless, you don't fold. You don't flinch. You become centered. You see through people, you read the room, you feel the energy shift. That's when you take control, not just of the situation, but of the direction of your life. You lose when you panic. You say the wrong thing, you accept the wrong terms, you give power to people who never earned it. Fear weakens your presence, it exposes your insecurities. But when fear is gone, your mind is free. You don't rush decisions, you don't make noise just to be heard. You wait, you watch, and then you strike calmly, precisely, without hesitation. Victory belongs to the one who isn't scared to lose. Because if you're scared to lose, you've already surrendered your strength. Detaching from fear isn't about arrogance. It's about alignment. It's knowing who you are, knowing what you carry, and knowing that no outcome can define your value. When fear is gone, what's left is clarity, power, and the authority to lead with vision. That's where the real war is won. Lower tariffs are not handouts. They're weapons in the hands of those who understand leverage. Weak negotiators see them as losses, but wise leaders, purpose-driven leaders see them as opportunities. A lower tariff strategically applied is not a surrender, it's a signal. It says we're confident in what we bring to the table. It says we're not operating from fear, we're operating from strength. When a country agrees to lower tariffs, it's not giving something away, it's choosing to structure trade in a way that multiplies long-term advantage. You don't use every weapon at once. The smartest warriors don't fight every battle. They position themselves to win the war. Tariffs are tools. And just like a builder chooses the right tool for the right moment, a great negotiator uses tariffs not out of anger, but with precision. Sometimes you raise them to apply pressure. Sometimes you lower them to build loyalty, to reset balance, or to create influence that lasts far beyond the contract. The weak leader sees every concession as defeat. But the strong leader understands timing, knows how to bend without breaking, knows how to give just enough to gain something far greater. Lowering tariffs with Japan, for example, isn't weakness. It's wisdom. It opens new channels, new relationships, new flows of capital. And when you make that move with clarity and confidence, you don't lose leverage, you increase it. This is where emotional detachment becomes so important. If you're emotionally attached to looking tough all the time, you'll miss the greater play, you'll miss the harvest because you're too focused on appearing dominant. But the master of the game doesn't need to prove strength, they move in strength. Lowering tariffs, when done right, is not retreat, it's repositioning. And only the wise understand the difference. Purpose-driven vision creates results. Reaction-based emotion creates collapse. That's the difference between building a future and surviving the moment. When a leader moves with purpose, every step is intentional. Every decision has weight. It's not about how something feels right now. It's about where it leads tomorrow. Purpose doesn't react to noise. It filters noise. It rises above it. Emotion, on the other hand, responds to every shadow, every whisper, every provocation. That's why emotional leaders are always exhausted, always chasing, always explaining, always defending. But leaders with vision don't chase, they choose. They don't react, they respond. Purpose is grounded in identity. It doesn't shift with polls, headlines, or pressure. It's steady, it's clear, and it commands respect. People follow vision, not volume. When you walk into a room with purpose, people feel it. It settles the atmosphere. It speaks without needing to shout. But when you're led by reaction, you say what feels good in the moment and regret it later. You offer too much. You compromise too quickly. You make decisions that solve a problem today but create chaos tomorrow. A trade deal without vision is just survival. But a deal born from purpose sets the tone for decades. It shapes economies. It creates momentum. It makes a statement to allies and adversaries alike. You don't build empires with reactions. You build them with revelation. And that revelation only comes to those who are still enough, bold enough, and focused enough to listen. Emotion will always pull you into drama, but vision pulls you into destiny. And when your leadership is fueled by vision, when you know why you're doing what you're doing, nothing can shake you. You move different. You think long term. And you create outcomes that echo long after the moment has passed. That's the power of purpose. Only a nation aligned with divine timing makes deals that shift the world. Timing is everything. You can have the right idea, the right strategy, the right resources, but if your timing is off, the whole thing collapses. Divine timing is not just about being ready, it's about being in rhythm with something greater. When a nation understands that, it doesn't rush, it doesn't panic, it moves with purpose and precision. It recognizes when the atmosphere is right, when the world is listening, when the pressure is at just the right point for a breakthrough. That's when you strike, not before, not after. Too many leaders force deals. They push because they're impatient, because they want a headline. But those deals never last. They unravel, they fall apart because they weren't born in alignment, they were born in ego. But a nation that understands divine timing waits. It watches, it prepares in silence, it builds strength behind the scenes. And then when the moment comes, it acts boldly, without hesitation, and the world feels the shift. That's what separates good negotiators from history-making leaders. It's not just about what they do, it's when they do it. They don't respond to pressure, they operate on a higher clock, a spiritual clock. And that's why their decisions act. That's why the deals they make carry weight beyond economics, because they're not just tactical, they're prophetic. When you move in divine timing, you don't have to force outcomes. You attract them. The right people come to the table. The right doors open. The world recognizes something is different, even if they can't explain it. It's not just policy, it's purpose. And when purpose meets perfect timing, history changes. That's how great nations rise, not through rush, not through luck, but through alignment with the timing only the wise can see. Every negotiation is a spiritual war. It's not just about money, goods, or contracts. It's about control, influence, presence. The battle isn't won on paper, it's won in energy and posture and who walks into the room owning themselves and who walks in trying to be accepted. The one who owns their emotions walks in with power. The one who needs to be liked, who needs to win at all costs, has already lost because the battlefield isn't external, it's internal. The person who can remain emotionally centered even when the pressure rises is the one who commands the room. Emotions are tools, not leaders. The moment your emotions lead you, you've handed over your authority. People can sense it. They can see when you're flustered. They can see when you're trying too hard, needing too much. But when you walk in settled, detached, certain, you carry weight. You become the immovable object. The conversation starts to bend around you. Winning a negotiation isn't about dominating. It's about being unmoved. It's about listening deeply and responding from truth, not tension. When you don't get pulled into emotional traps, you start to see patterns, you see motives, you hear what's not being said. That's how you make decisions that last. That's how you outmaneuver people who rely on pressure tactics. It's spiritual because it requires mastery of self. Master of your thoughts, master of your thoughts, master of your presence. If you can stay calm in the storm, you own the storm. Because in negotiation, people aren't just reacting to your words, they're reacting to your spirit. Your stillness becomes a weapon. Your peace becomes persuasion. And that's why the spiritually mature always win. Not because they force their way in, but because they never give their power away. The room follows the one who doesn't flinch. The art of the deal is the art of inner mastery first. Outer power follows. Every great deal, every historic agreement, every game-changing negotiation starts not with strategy on paper, but with strategy in the soul. If you haven't mastered yourself, you can't master the moment. You can have the facts, the leverage, the numbers, but if you're insecure, if you're desperate, if you're looking for validation, you will fold under pressure. You will either overcompensate or backpedal. But when you've done the inner work, when you know who you are and what you stand for, you walk into any negotiation already ahead. The external world is just a reflection of the internal one. The leader who is at war with himself brings confusion to the table. But the leader who is at peace brings clarity. That's why some people win without trying. They've already done the work behind closed doors. They've faced their fear. They've cut off emotional neediness. They've built resilience, not just reputation. Power without self-control is chaos, but power with discipline is unstoppable. And that's what inner mastery gives you. You're not negotiating just for results. You're negotiating from identity. You don't need to force anything because what you carry speaks louder than what you say. People can feel when a leader is grounded, it changes the entire dynamic. The deal doesn't begin when the meeting starts. It begins long before, in the mindset, in the preparation, in the discipline to remain silent when silence is needed and to speak only when it's time. When you master yourself, you don't chase outcomes, you create them, you don't compete, you dictate the terms. That's the art of the deal. Not just to win a moment, but to shape the future by first shaping the man or woman who leads it.